Jacksonville International Airport serves as a key transportation hub in Northeast Florida, supporting a broad mix of residents, industries, and a rapidly growing regional economy. With a mix of coastal charm and growing urban development, JAX has become a favored destination for both leisure and business travelers seeking convenient access to the Sunshine State. Jacksonville is one of the fastest-growing large cities in the U.S. It surpassed 1 million residents in 2023 and has now grown to 1.36 million residents, making it the 11th largest city in the U.S. based on population. That growth is supported by a robust and diverse economy, including key industries such as aviation and aerospace, defense, logistics, finance, healthcare, IT, and advanced manufacturing. In addition, the city is home to Naval Air Station Jacksonville and Naval Air Station Mayport. The Jacksonville Air Traffic Control Tower provides ATC services for the Jacksonville International Airport and the associated Class C airspace. In 2024, Jacksonville Airport handled 7.6 million passengers and has shown steady increase in passengers over the past decade. To support this growth, JAX is undergoing terminal expansion, with a new concourse currently under construction. The project is expected to boost commercial capacity and increase the volume of airline traffic in and out of the airport. The facility also includes terminal radar approach control, known as a TRACON. The tower and TRACON provide 24/7 air traffic services across Class C airspace and a wide swath of Northeast and Central Florida. Jacksonville TRACON's airspace spans roughly 170 miles northeast to southwest and about 83 miles wide, covering approximately 12,000 square miles. Tower and TRACON controllers handle a mix of aircraft, including scheduled airline flights, air taxis, cargo, corporate jets, general aviation, and military traffic. In addition to Jacksonville International Airport, the TRACON oversees arrivals and departures for more than 170 public and private use airports, heliports, and seaplane bases. Due to the location of numerous satellite airports surrounding JAX and a mix of users, airspace congestion is common. Craig Airport, located 12 nautical miles south of JAX, consistently ranks among the busiest general aviation airports in the country, with over 170,000 operations per year, and is home to over 10 flight schools, including Jacksonville University's flight training program and ATP Flight School. In addition to Craig, Fernandina Municipal Airport, an uncontrolled field located 12 nautical miles east of JAX, recorded more than 50,000 operations in 2024. Naval Air Station Jacksonville to the southwest has over 100 full-time based aircraft, and Naval Air Station Mayport has multiple H-60 squadrons. The constant mix of flight training, military operations, Part 91 and 135 flights, and scheduled air carrier service generates constant high-density VFR and IFR traffic, requiring active monitoring and vectoring from TRACON controllers in the vicinity of Jacksonville International Airport. As we move forward, it is essential to recognize that the airspace surrounding Jacksonville will continue to evolve in complexity and demand. With increasing traffic from commercial airlines, corporate operations, and flight training activity, the region's airspace structure must remain dynamic and adaptable. Anticipating these changes and proactively refining airspace design and procedures will be key to maintaining safety, efficiency, and operational integrity. Sustained collaboration among stakeholders and a forward-thinking approach will ensure that Jacksonville remains a leader in managing the challenges of a rapidly advancing aviation environment.
Welcome to the FAA's informal airspace meeting on the proposed modification of Class Charlie airspace surrounding Jacksonville International Airport. We're glad you could join us for this virtual event. I'm Andres Davis, the FAA's moderator for today's meeting. The purpose of this meeting is to gather additional information to be considered in developing the proposal. These meetings provide interested parties an opportunity to present views, recommendations, and comments on the proposal. Please note that the proposed modification would not affect the number of aircraft in the area and would not change the flight paths aircraft use today. Instead, these modifications are designed to better manage and communicate with aircraft operating within the Jacksonville airspace. As a result, the proposed modification will increase safety and reduce the potential risk of conflicts between aircraft for every pilot during all operations. Here's our agenda. The meeting will start with the FAA's detailed presentation of the proposed Jacksonville airspace design, followed by presentations and comments from the attendees who registered in advance to speak. Afterwards, our panel of experts will hold a question and answer session. Attendees on Zoom or YouTube can submit written questions while the meeting is streaming live. At the completion of the question and answer session, we will adjourn after brief closing remarks. For those of you who are joining us on Zoom, your microphones are muted and cameras are off. To submit a question during the question and answer session, please enter your written question in the question and answer tab on the Zoom platform. If you are attending this meeting via YouTube, you can submit your questions directly in the comment section. If you're having technical issues connecting to the virtual meeting, you can text our technical support team at 949-478-0253. This phone number is for text messaging only. The FAA is soliciting comments on this proposal, and we encourage you to submit any comments you may have. Please note, submitting your question during the question and answer session is not the same as providing a formal written comment. You can submit a formal comment by mailing it to the FAA at 1701 Columbia Avenue, College Park, Georgia, 30337, or by emailing it to the email address shown on the screen. Please provide your comments by Saturday, October 11th, 2025. You can also visit our website at www.faa.gov/go/Jacksonville for more information about the project. Now, you will hear an overview of the Jacksonville airspace and the applicable information regarding the proposed design from the air traffic controllers at Jacksonville International Air Traffic Control Tower.
Hi, I'm Medina Bird, the Air Traffic Manager at Jacksonville Air Traffic Control Tower. In the next few slides, I'll provide a basic overview of the Jacksonville International Airport and surrounding airspace operations. Jacksonville International Airport is a commercial service airport located north of downtown Jacksonville in Duval County, operating in Class Charlie airspace. The airport serves commercial air carriers, general aviation aircraft, and military operations. Jacksonville International provides residents of Northeast Florida and Southeast Georgia with access to 11 airlines, 2 cargo operators, and numerous corporate and charter flights. Combined, these airport users generate over 270 flights per day. In 2024, Jacksonville International reported its busiest year ever, moving more than 7.6 million passengers through the airport. The runways at Jacksonville were built to align with the prevailing wind direction in the area. To operate safely, aircraft typically take off and land into the wind. You will see numbers on the runway, and those numbers indicate the compass heading the aircraft is facing as it lands or takes off. For example, runway 826 is 80 degrees in one direction and 260 degrees in the other. Jacksonville is equipped with 2 runways, designated runway 826 and runway 1432. These runways are angled in a converging configuration, but do not intersect with one another. The most frequently used runway at Jacksonville is runway 826. This is the longest of the 2 runways at 10,000 feet in length and is oriented roughly east-west. Due to the longer length and the runway being more closely aligned with prevailing east-west winds, most commercial arrivals and departures use runway 826 instead of the 7,700 feet northwest-southeast aligned runway 1432. The selection of the runway in use is managed by FAA Air Traffic Control and is dependent on wind direction and other operational factors. In addition to commercial passenger traffic, Jacksonville also serves significant military operations. The Florida Air National Guard operates a fleet of F-35 fighter aircraft, which utilize runway 826 due to required emergency arresting gear being installed on that runway. Jacksonville International's passenger terminal currently features 2 passenger concourses containing 20 boarding gates. To accommodate sustained growth in passengers, a 6-gate third concourse, Concourse B, is currently under construction with completion anticipated in the fourth quarter of 2026. Within 15 nautical miles of the Jacksonville International Airport, there are a mix of civilian and military airports. These airports consist of Cecil Airport, Jacksonville Executive Airport at Craig, White House Naval Outlying Field, Jacksonville Naval Air Station, and Mayport Naval Air Station. These satellite airports are located between 12 to 15 nautical miles from Jacksonville International, and the types of operations conducted at them range from military to corporate jets to flight training to glider and parachute operations. In 2024, these satellite airports conducted approximately 500,000 flight operations. Many of these operations are by non-participating VFR aircraft flying under visual flight rules or VFR conditions. A non-participating VFR aircraft is an aircraft that is not receiving air traffic control services. VFR refers to aircraft being flown visually, and pilots do not need to communicate with air traffic control unless required. The variety of operation types and the large number of operations, particularly by VFR aircraft, leads to a very complex and congested airspace. The FAA directs traffic through 3-dimensional airspace, which is divided into airspace classes. The 4 primary categories of airspace are controlled, uncontrolled, special use, and other. Controlled airspace includes classes A, B, C, D, and E. For our purposes today, we'll focus on Class C. In controlled airspace, air traffic control services are provided to instrument flight rules, or IFR flights, and to visual flight rules, or VFR flights, in accordance with the airspace classification. In Class C airspace, aircraft must be equipped with a 2-way radio and must establish communications with air traffic control prior to entering this airspace. A transponder with altitude reporting capability and ADS-B out is required to operate in and above Class Charlie. Air traffic services and separation are provided to both IFR and VFR aircraft.
Hello, my name is Joseph Newkirk, and I am the NAC Airspace representative and a certified professional controller at Jacksonville Air Traffic Tower and TRACON. The following slides will present graphics depicting the current Jacksonville airspace and the FAA proposed change. The FAA has conducted an extensive study, and the following graphics reflect the detailed work done to design the proposed airspace. This graphic shows the current Jacksonville Class C airspace depicted by a solid garnet line. 5 other airports with Class D airspace are located within 12 to 15 nautical miles of Jacksonville. These are the Cecil Airport, Jacksonville Naval Air Station, Mayport Naval Air Station, Jacksonville Executive Airport at Craig, and White House Naval Outlying Field. The Class D airspace surrounding these airports is depicted by a dashed blue line. The current Class D airspace for Jacksonville has a ceiling of 4,000 feet above mean sea level, or MSL, and has an inner and outer area. The floor of the inner area begins at ground level, shown as surface or SFC. The second outer area has an airspace floor of 1,200 feet MSL. The current Class Charlie airspace overlies one major airport, Jacksonville International. Recently collected data suggests that the current airspace dimensions are insufficient to safely accommodate the increase in air traffic at Jacksonville International Airport and the surrounding airspace. In February 2024, as part of the Class Charlie modification process, the FAA met with the Jacksonville Class C Ad Hoc Committee to explain and present the proposed airspace. The Ad Hoc Committee was comprised of local airspace users to provide input and recommendations on the proposed change. After receiving the Ad Hoc Committee's recommendations and reviewing the committee's final report, the FAA modified the original Class Charlie proposal and resulted in the Class Charlie dimensions shown on the right. This sectional chart shows the proposed revisions to the Jacksonville Class C airspace. The proposed airspace includes extensions along the runway 8 and 26 final approaches. In addition, the 10-mile ring is expanded to the southwest. These new boundaries and the associated vertical limits were designed in accordance with FAA Order 7400.2. This slide depicts the revised proposed Class C airspace. The proposed Class C includes 4 areas designated with the letters A, B, C, and D. Each area will be individually reviewed in the upcoming slides. Area A is the inner 5-mile radius ring and remains unchanged. The vertical limits will remain from the surface to 4,000 feet MSL. Area B is the 10-mile radius outer ring. The vertical dimensions of this area remain unchanged from the current 1,200 to 4,000 feet MSL. The original proposal in 2024 completed the outer 10-mile ring. After reviewing concerns from users through the ad hoc report, the southern portion has been adjusted to allow a VFR corridor into and out of the Jacksonville metropolitan area, and specifically the Jacksonville Executive Airport at Craig. Extending Area B on the southwest corner was essential to ensure aircraft conducting an ILS or RNAV approach to runway 8 across the 10-mile initial approach fixed Libby while remaining inside the Class C airspace. Flight paths of aircraft flying the ILS or RNAV to runway 8 routinely take the aircraft to a 10-mile final to allow for stabilized approaches and sequencing. The ability to join a 10-mile final while ensuring the aircraft are deconflicted from non-participating VFR aircraft enhances safety and was therefore paramount in this design change. Area C is defined as the extension on the runway 8 final approach. Area C was originally proposed as a 5 nautical mile extension both north and south of the runway 8 centerline. After further review, we have adjusted the southern boundary to 4 nautical miles of being the final approach segment. We also have adjusted the initial proposal of a 15-mile extension to 13.5 nautical miles from the runway 8 threshold. The vertical portion is proposed as 2,100 feet to 4,000 feet. This is an amendment to the original proposal of 1,200 to 4,000 feet. Area C is essential to ensure sufficient protected airspace for arriving aircraft, particularly those descending from higher altitudes or entering the approach corridor at extended distances. Extending the final segment enhances sequencing capability, minimizes last-minute corrections, and reduces the risk of conflict with VFR aircraft operating just outside the Class C boundary. The proposed 2,100-foot floor allows VFR aircraft to transition below at an altitude consistent with standard 1,000-foot separation intervals, allowing JAX arrivals to cross this area at 3,000 feet and non-participating VFRs to pass below at 2,000 feet. This structure supports safe integration of non-participating aircraft, reduces risks of potential air traffic conflicts, and provides controllers with greater flexibility to manage complex arrival flows without unnecessary altitude restrictions. Area D is defined as the extension over the runway 26 final. Area D extends the Class Charlie to a 13.6 nautical mile final. The northern boundary is 6.6 nautical miles of being the final, and the southern boundary is 5 nautical miles of being the final. The vertical portion is proposed as 2,100 feet to 4,000 feet. This is an amendment to the original proposal of 1,200 to 4,000 feet. These changes are a result of recommendations from the Ad Hoc Committee. Area D is essential to ensure sufficient protected airspace for aircraft arriving on runway 26. Amelia Island and the Fernandina Beach Airport are under the Area D extension. This area is highly congested with non-participating VFR aircraft. The lateral confines are proposed to allow JAX arrivals to extend beyond the current 10-mile final while ensuring separation from non-participating VFR flights. The vertical portion will allow non-participating VFR aircraft to transition Amelia Island at or below 2,000 feet while ensuring adequate vertical separation exists from IFR JAX arrivals. As suggested by the ad hoc committee, the eastern boundary terminates just beyond the beach with easy-to-identify landmarks for aircraft wishing to remain east of the Class Charlie. This slide shows daily arrivals to runway 8 with the new proposed airspace. The base to final leg, circled in yellow, is consistently outside the current Class C. This is due to volume and complexity. This slide shows daily arrivals to runway 26. Again, we see base legs and final segments, circled in yellow, beyond the current Class C. Arrival paths are less consolidated on this operation due to the inconsistent vectoring from air traffic while avoiding non-participating VFR aircraft. Each blue line represents a non-participating VFR aircraft flight track. These flight tracks are often from aircraft involved in flight training and are unpredictable in course and altitude. This project focuses on the conflicts between these VFR tracks and the arrivals to runway 8 and 26. Data collected during the proposal of this project showed that on some days, over 100 individual aircraft transitioned or loitered on the extended finals of runway 8 and 26. Aircraft 1 is approaching Jacksonville International Airport from the south on a visual approach to runway 8. Aircraft 2 is a non-participating VFR flying north to south across the runway 8 final and just beyond the current dimensions of the Class Charlie airspace. Aircraft 2 is first observed in straight and level flight, indicating an altitude of 3,500 feet. ATC descends aircraft 1 to 2,000 feet to go below aircraft 2 and join the final approach course on a stabilized flight path. Aircraft 2 begins a descent while converging with aircraft 1. Without communication with aircraft 2, ATC is unsure of their intentions and issues a traffic alert to aircraft 1. Eventually, aircraft 1 responds to a TCAS RA and reports aircraft 2 in sight. The two aircraft pass 1.3 nautical miles laterally and 300 feet vertically while converging at nearly 400 knots. Aircraft 1 is being vectored in sequence for a visual approach to runway 26 at Jacksonville International Airport. Aircraft 2 is a high-performance, non-participating VFR that departs Fernandina Beach Municipal Airport. The controller observes the conflict and issues a heading and altitude change to aircraft 1. Unfortunately, without communication with aircraft 2, ATC is unsure what direction or altitude the aircraft will fly. The traffic alert is issued to aircraft 1 and the aircraft responds to a TCAS RA. The pilot described the RA climb as a rapid transition from their descent profile. This rapid change, while in close proximity of the airport, often leads to unstable approaches and possibly a go-around. Additionally, the final approach segment of the flight is often described as an already high workload segment under normal conditions.
Hi, I'm Andres Davis, Team Manager for Airspace and Procedures at the FAA's Eastern Service Center. In the upcoming slides, I'll discuss the FAA's rulemaking and environmental review processes. Any changes to Class Charlie airspace must go through the rulemaking process. Rulemaking is the process federal agencies use to make new regulations. Any proposed rule goes through numerous reviews, and the public has the opportunity to review and comment on the proposed rule. The FAA is required to review and consider every comment. Once the agency has read and considered all comments, it decides whether to go ahead with the final rule. The agency may adopt a final rule that is identical or similar to the initial proposal, or it might make changes based on the comments. As shown on the slide, this informal airspace meeting is an integral part of the process that comes before the notice of proposed rulemaking. Before any changes can be made, the proposed rule must also go through an environmental review, which is required by the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA. NEPA requires that the agency evaluate environmental and related social and economic effects of the proposed action. The review includes a preliminary technical review, a preliminary environmental review, an internal review, and choice of appropriate NEPA review, which could include extraordinary circumstances and significant impacts. The graphic on this slide depicts the FAA's general NEPA process for all projects. It is not specific to this project, but it will be applied to this project. We're about to begin the live portion of the meeting and the question and answer session with the expert panel. Here's a summary of the next steps in the process. Comments will be accepted until October 11, 2025. The FAA will consolidate and review comments. The FAA will consider comments and incorporate pertinent modifications. The FAA will finalize the environmental review. Once the notice of proposed rulemaking has been published in the Federal Register, there will be a separate 60-day comment period. We encourage you to submit your written comments. You may do so by addressing them to the FAA via mail or via email to the address shown on the screen. Please submit your comments no later than October 11, 2025. You can also visit our website at www.faa.gov/go/Jacksonville for more information about the project. Today's meeting is being recorded and will be available on FAA's website for future viewing. Hello again. I'm Andres Davis, and I'll be the moderator for the live portion of this workshop. I'd like to cover 3 procedural items before we begin the question and answer session. First, if you're having technical issues connecting to the workshop, you can text our tech support number anytime during the workshop at 949-478-0253. Second, we're streaming this workshop on the FAA's YouTube live feed and recording it for viewing on our website after the workshop concludes. Finally, this meeting pertains to the proposed modification of the Jacksonville Class Charlie airspace, and we'll be fielding questions related to the proposed change. We're requesting that questions outside of the scope of the proposal be limited to ensure there is ample time to address questions related to the proposed modification. We will now begin the segment where participants can provide comments or make presentations where each person is limited to 3 minutes. We'll announce each attendee's name and unmute their microphone in the Zoom webinar. Just a reminder that spoken statements are not considered formal comments on this proposal. These must be submitted in writing as per the meeting notice. If you prefer to submit a formal comment instead of speaking, please inform the panel so we can adjust the schedule accordingly. I will add that all presentations are the speaker's personal perspectives and do not reflect the opinion of the FAA. We have one presenter today, Meredith Holliday. Meredith, you have 3 minutes to speak.
Yes, thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, thank you so much. I just wanted to say that I think it's very good that the FAA redesigned the initial proposal. I think that the revised design can work very well for us anyway. I just submitted a question in the Q&A. I wasn't clear if I should ask that question now or just through the Q&A. I don't know if you see it there.
Your question will be submitted in the question and answer. This is your opportunity to speak.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, that's all I have to say. I just think that the revised design looks reasonable to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Meredith. That concludes our presentations for this evening. Next, we will move on to the live question and answer session. As Meredith mentioned, during this question and answer session, we'll address the questions we're receiving from Zoom and FAA's social media platforms. At this time, I'd like to introduce our panelists. Lewis Hancock. Lewis is the Jacksonville District General Manager. Harry Kaufman, he's a NATCA facility representative, and he's a certified professional controller here at Jacksonville International. Next is Joe or Joseph Newkirk. He's the NACA Airspace representative and certified professional controller here at Jacksonville. Welcome, panelists, and thank you for representing your facility. But before we answer questions from this meeting, I'd like to ask the panelists a few questions received from registrants during the Zoom registration process. Okay, the first question we'll address is, were commercial aircraft, so this question has to do with commercial aircraft, and Joe, you're looking very professional this evening. Good to see you. Were commercial aircraft considered when designing this proposed change? If so, is the FAA only considering the effects on commercial aircraft?
Thank you for the question, Andres. The short answer to that is no. The FAA considered all aircraft in the design and the modification of this airspace. And let me explain that a little bit further. When we started this process several years ago, we began collecting data and reviewing safety events between arrivals to Jackson International and non-participating VFR aircraft just beyond the current dimensions of the Class Charlie today. In nearly every one of the events we reviewed, a commercial user is referenced, and there's two reasons for that. The first being commercial users are the primary user of Jacksonville International Airport. The second being commercial users, commercial aircraft are typically equipped with traffic collision avoidance systems. This TCAS system is installed on the aircraft.
Jules, get down.
And when an aircraft equipped with TCAS is in close proximity of another aircraft, they may receive a resolution advisory. It's a command for the pilot to climb or descend. Every time an air carrier responds to a TCAS RA, a resolution advisory, the FAA must complete a mandatory occurrence report known as an MOR. These MORs contain information such as date, time, call signs, and a brief description of the event. So as we moved forward with this project, we started looking at this data and these safety events. And yes, you're absolutely right. Commercial users are going to be referenced in almost every one of the events we looked at. But we believe if we're keeping commercial aircraft separated from non-participating VFR aircraft, that's important to both pilots, both aircraft. We're keeping aircraft separated. We believe that the modification to the Class Charlie, through the input that we received in the ad hoc process, and hopefully some input we received tonight, is going to increase safety, not just for commercial users, but for all users.
And I like the way you ended that, Joe. It does come down to safety for the entire operation, and that includes all users. And we'll hear that constantly throughout the evening. It's a matter of integration of the operation and enhancing safety. Thanks again, Joe. The next question, it has to do with the design. And Harry, if you don't mind, let's test your mute button this evening. It looks like that worked. Awesome. Why can't the FAA leave operations the way they are now? Harry, can you help me?
Thank you, Andres. I think that's a valid question. Over the past few years, the Jacksonville air traffic has increased in volume and complexity, and the amount which has led to a higher amount of safety incidents. We proposed this new airspace to improve the safety and efficiency in and around the Jacksonville area. This ensures predictable flight paths for all aircraft in the vicinity of the airport, and that non-participating pilots do not fly into an area that is unsafe for their flight.
Thank you, Harry. The next question has to do with controller support at the facility. And I'll start off with Joe, and then I'll lean a little on Lewis for the management perspective. But Joe, do air traffic controllers support this proposal? We hear this at probably every single one of our meetings. But do air traffic controllers support this proposal?
Yeah, Yep. The answer to that question is absolutely. Local air traffic controllers were part of this project from the very beginning. They were briefed on the initial changes. They were briefed on the feedback from the ad hoc committee, and they're even aware of the meeting tonight and what we're introducing tonight. Part of that data that I spoke about earlier when we were talking, or I was talking about safety events, one other area we looked into to find and identify safety concerns is anonymous safety reporting. It's a system called ADSAP that controllers can use to anonymously report safety events. We had several controllers report safety events in the airspace and the airspace that's contained in this project. So we reviewed those. They, through those ADSAPs, had mentioned possibly modifying the class Charlie. And then additionally, through the staff study, or prior to the staff study that led up to this project, the local safety council, which is a council at the facility, it's made up of management representatives and representatives from the controller workforce. They reviewed this project. They agree with the project, and ultimately that led to the staff study, which brought us to where we are today. And maybe Lewis can speak a little bit more to the management perspective on that, but that's the controller perspective.
Thank you, Joe. So on the management perspective of the FAA, we are in line with the controller's perspective on that. This entire process has been a collaborative process together jointly with the local flying community, the ad hoc committee, with our operations support group, as well as the local air traffic controllers. All variations of data was taken into account. As Joe mentioned, that ATSAP data was pulled and inquired with and taken into consideration with this, and definitely has been a collaborative process, but all in agreement on all of this.
Well put, gentlemen. It is about a collaboration between all personnel involved from the operation. And all obviously does extend to the aviation stakeholders, which that is a good way to tee up the next question. Lewis, you exercised that mute button once. Let's do it one more time, as you will do a number of times this evening. Will there be any impact on flight schools and student pilot training in the Jacksonville area?
Thanks, Andres. That's a great question. There's not a large anticipated impact on flight schools and local currently non-participating aircraft, other than a possible uncharted VFR practice area to the north that might have to shift slightly north of the Fernandina area. The intention of this is not to exclude those aircraft from those areas, but rather than be in two-way communication with those aircraft now to provide a better service. The intention, again, is not to exclude those aircraft from operating in those current areas, just to be in communication. That way we can anticipate what those aircraft are going to be doing, whether it be maneuvers, VFR, other procedures, and provide positive separation between those aircraft and other aircraft receiving air traffic services.
Well put, Lewis. Thank you. The next question, it touches on White House Naval Outlying Field. And Joe, if you don't mind, is anything going to happen with White House Outlying Field, Naval Outlying Field, airspace? This person is stating a lot of GA pilot training happens near Fernandina Beach. And if the White House Outlying Field, NEN, could become a class echo, that could be beneficial to GA training. Okay, so let's just back up with the question. Is anything going to happen with White House Outlying Field airspace? There was more information in the statement about the GA aircraft and the effects in the operation. Joe?
Yep.
Thanks.
Take a stab at it?
Yeah, so Navy White House, as we call it, the controlling agency that operates that Class Delta is the controllers out of Navy Jacksonville. They call up that airspace to Class Delta airspace when they're conducting air carrier simulation training on the runway there. It's infrequently used. As far as the future of Navy White House and how frequently it's used, that would be a question for the controlling agency, which would be the Navy. Perhaps if that's a written comment or a written question we get after this meeting, we can reach out to the Navy and get a little bit more information to provide maybe a better answer. I can tell you right now, if you're a non-participating VFR aircraft and you're wishing to fly in that area, there's two ways to get the status of that Class Delta if it's active. Over Jack's approach, we have 7 frequencies that cover that area. All 7 air traffic frequencies are monitored 24/7, and the controller on those frequencies can tell you the status of that airspace. Additionally, Navy Jack's tower should also know the status of it. Their frequency 125.15. You could check in with them and ask the status as well. If it's not being used, then by all means, VFR training flights, non-participating aircraft can go use that airspace for their flight mission.
Thank you, Joe. You touched on every bit of that. The statement, and I think the concern was the Class Delta and the uncontrolled class Gulf. So thank you for that. Well put. And I think you held the main points. The next question has to do with the proposed design and what's the justification for it. Harry, if you don't mind helping me out with this question here, what is causing the need for a change? What are the proposed changes? And how are low-level helicopter operations affected? And so it comes down to the change. Why are we proposing a change? And they want us to touch a little bit on low-level helicopter operations. Harry?
Thank you, Andres. I think the best or the most simple answer to that, that's a little loaded question there, but the most simple way to answer that is to provide more predictable flight paths for non-participating aircraft that are flying through the Jacksonville area. As far as the extensions, their extensions were made just so that we know what altitudes we can use to safely have participating aircraft transition into the Jacksonville airport. But as far as low-level helicopters, I don't see much of a change initially. If they would like to transition, just because the extension before shows that surface to 2000, they can still transition as a non-participating aircraft without talking to ATC. And I see that we're pulling up a slide here. Thank you. That makes it a little easier for me. So on the east and west side of the Charlie on the extensions, we could show that these helicopters or any other low-level aircraft can transition below 2,100 feet without having to talk to ATC. So for helicopters, I don't see much of a change, but I would like to reiterate that the extension doesn't mean that we don't want to have participating aircraft. We would love to have more participating aircraft talking to ATC for a transition. So as the helicopters that we talked to today experience, any Class Charlie transition is almost always granted with two-way radio communication.
Thank you for that, Harry, and thank you for the folks in the back pulling up the slide there. To just reiterate a little bit of what you just mentioned, it does come down to communication, not excluding aircraft, and that's to include helicopter activity as well. And they were considered in the proposed design. Thanks again, Harry. The next question, Lewis, if existing Class Delta and TRACON procedures already handle traffic, why is Class Charlie expansion the right solution instead of better controller staff or technology upgrades?
All right, Andres. So Class Delta and TRACON procedures already handle traffic. So the question then asking Class Charlie expansion the right solution instead of better controller staffing or technology upgrades. So I do want to start by assuring that the controller staffing is adequate for the facility at Jacksonville Tower and TRACON. There are no identified issues with not being able to staff current positions due to current traffic demands or previous traffic demands. We do not have any data to support that. There have been occasions when VFR services have been denied for short periods of time due to temporary peak operations from controllers. That typically occurs when you get a multiple requests at one time, possibly handling an emergency, or in the interim when traffic is increased and you're trying to decombine sectors, you just have to get an additional resource in there to be able to provide those services. The facility does not have routine experiences denying VFR services on a regular basis. We definitely do track if that is ever occurring, and we do not have any reported events of that at Jacksonville Tower and Tracon. So therefore, the staffing is not an issue at Jacksonville Tower and Tracon. Reference to technology upgrades, there has been a topic that has been brought up numerous times throughout this Class Charlie modification process, as well as other airports, and that is, why can't you use vertical separation from non-participating aircraft and participating aircraft? And that explanation is pretty simple, especially when aircraft now, with the current technology, have ADS-B, and we are able to see that ADS-B information. And that goes to the verification of Mode C readouts. Unless that altitude has been verified by air traffic control, we cannot use vertical separation from non-participating or non-identified aircraft. Therefore, we have to use what is called target resolution or lateral separation from those aircraft. So when we talk about technology upgrades, the technology is there, but in order to use it, we still have to include air traffic services. I hope that answers that question fully. Andres, please let me know if I need to elaborate further.
No, I do think you touched on a number of different points in there. I'd also add, if you can only have one controller keyed up on frequency, so you can add 5 more people into the mix, but you have one aircraft, one controller on frequency at a time, and those are the folks that are addressing the issue. And it comes down to that line of communication, that one line of communication to keep aircraft safe and to inform them. And that comes down to the actual lines being drawn. You spoke on the technology, and I definitely appreciate that, Louis. All right, the next question. Harry, this is an easy question for you, I believe. Will skydiving ops continue over Fernandina Beach and Amelia Island?
Thank you for the easy question, Andres. I'll do my best to answer this one. I don't think this will affect much of our skydiving operations at Fernandina Beach and Amelia Island. We have a great relationship with Skydive Amelia Island and World Skydiving Center. We already have an LOAs with them, and according to, with the LOAs, these skydiving operators are already required to establish two-way communication with air traffic under the current configuration in the current Class Charlie. So I don't see much of a change for the skydiving operations over Fernandina at this time.
Thank you, Harry. Here's another question about Fernandina Beach. I have problems saying Fernandina, by the way, but I'm going to say it anyway. We'll struggle with it. If maintenance was performed on my aircraft at Fernandina, will I be allowed to perform a post-maintenance test flight directly above Fernandina inside the proposed airspace? Okay, so Joe, I'm going to ask you to help me out. I'm going to restate the question. If maintenance was performed on my aircraft at Fernandina, will I be allowed to perform a post-maintenance test flight directly above Fernandina? And this may be a little bit of a nuanced question. So let's step through it.
Yeah. So, yeah, absolutely. If you're on a post-maintenance test flight and you would like to climb above the Fernandina Beach Airport into the proposed extensions, specifically that would be the runway 26 final, we absolutely would give you service through there. You would obviously need ADSB and a two-way radio to establish two-way radio communications with air traffic. What's kind of unique about Jacksonville approach control is we are not strangers to providing traffic advisories to aircraft with no destination that are just out in the area flying around, maybe doing maneuvers through a flight training program, sightseeing. That's something that this facility is known for. We've done it for a long time. We try and tell users of our airspace that this service is provided. So this request would be no different from that. You would just call air traffic, let them know what your intentions are. We would, through two-way radio communication, you would be allowed to climb through the airspace. And really, a post-maintenance test flight already introduces additional risk to the pilot. So I think talking to air traffic in that situation, again, we're another resource for pilots. So if something did happen on that flight, to already be in two-way radio communication with air traffic, we would be able to assist the pilot immediately. I think it's a great idea, and we absolutely would be able to accommodate that.
Thank you, Joe. The next question, will Jacksonville have the resources to continue to support VFR services and practice approaches at Craig, Jacksonville, and Cecil? So will we have the resources necessary to continue to support VFR services to the outlying airports? And Lewis, I see you already off of mute, anxious to answer. Would you give me a little help for that question, sir?
Thank you, Andres. The simple answer to that is yes. Jacksonville currently has 36 certified air traffic controllers and 8 controllers in training. The current certification now puts them at 80% of their, just under 80% of their total allocation. These impacts do not intend to these modifications do not intend to impact Craig or Cecil directly, though they will impact non-participating aircraft that are intending to land or depart those airports. If they intend to remain clear of the Class Charlie, they would just have to establish two-way communication to transition through. There's no impact expected for availability of published instant approaches at Jacksonville or satellite airports with that as well.
And Lewis, this is one of the things that was considered when creating the proposed design. Isn't that true?
Yes, it was, Andres, and that is why the modifications were taken into account.
Thank you, sir. All right, Harry, can you discuss the reasoning behind the flat portion of the south side of the Charlie airspace instead of making it completely circular? I like this question because it's going to, well, just to tee it up, there's a lot of collaboration with external stakeholders, and I think this will really highlight some of that collaboration, deliberation that we have. I hate to take a little bit away from you there, Harry, but
you're stealing my word, Andres. But I was going to say at least 4 or 5 times in this answer is collaboration. Initially, yes, we did have our first rendition of this airspace was a full circle on the inner ring. After collaborating with the ad hoc findings, we realized that that's not exactly what we needed, as much as the pilots needed a VFR corridor to go in and out of Craig on the west, or Hurlong, just south of the runway 8 final at Jackson International. So after many discussions and meetings and with the ad hoc findings, we found that we'd rather have that VFR corridor for the pilots and the transitioning VFR non-participating aircraft to go in and out of Craig without having to talk to air traffic.
thank you, Harry. And just to reiterate, for those who missed that part during the presentation, the ad hoc committee, we've We've discussed it. We'll talk more about it throughout the evening, but the ad hoc committee is a committee that was established in order to provide input on the proposed design from air traffic. And that committee is comprised of a group of aviation stakeholders, the people who actually use the airspace, those aviation stakeholders that can review the proposed design and provide their input on that proposed design. And air traffic took those recommendations that they provided and made some concessions. And you'll see those things throughout the night, along with what we just referenced, that flat portion of the south side in the proposed Class Charlie. Thanks, Harry, and I'll try not to take any more of your words away. Okay. So this question has a lot of statements in it. I'm going to read the question and then we'll see where we go from there. Joe, I'm going to ask that you try to get in tune with me here as I say a lot of words, but let's see where it goes. Currently non-participating.
If you see my head down, Andres, I'm going to take notes, so hopefully I can answer every part of this. I'm not ignoring you, just taking some notes here.
Take your time. So currently non-participating VFR aircraft departing Craig northbound typically shoot the gap between the Jacksonville Charlie and the NRB's Class Delta. Okay, I think I see where that's going. Aircraft departing the area would tend to continue climbing to cruise altitude and either head towards the coast or turn on course once clear the northern boundary of the Jacksonville airspace. The proposed changes would ideally encourage participation in air traffic control services among transiting VFR aircraft, but the more likely outcome is the bottlenecking of VFR traffic under the outer Charlie shelf, and an increase in the volume of low altitude VFR traffic. Okay, I'm going to skip some of that because that's really, in essence, what it is. Aircraft having to circumnavigate if they don't want to participate, right? So the question is, why is it a better choice to change the airspace dimensions as proposed to altering TRACON procedures to vector aircraft to final inside the Class Charlie on days not requiring an instrument approach? I'll ask that question one more time as you get your notes together. Why is it a better choice to change the airspace dimensions as opposed to altering TRACON procedures to vector aircraft to final inside the Class Charlie airspace?
Okay, I think so. I kind of got two questions out of that. And at the end, if you need any additional information, please let me know. But the first one talks about bottlenecking traffic underneath the extension over Amelia Island. We don't believe that will happen quite like the question asks, for a couple reasons. One, again, two-way radio communication gets you access to this airspace. A Class Charlie airspace is not intended to exclude operations, but rather establish radio communication so we can determine the intended flight path of the users of the airspace. It's written like this in the FAA Order 7110.65. It directs us how to use Class Charlie airspace. Additionally, through collaboration with the ad hoc committee originally recommended that we have a airspace floor of that extension at 2,200 feet. We were able to collaborate and accommodate that with the change of it being 2,100 feet. So what that allows for non-participating VFR users over Amelia Island is you've got 1,000-foot pattern altitude for aircraft operating in the VFR pattern at Fernandina Beach. You have a 1,500-foot pattern entry altitude for aircraft overflying the airport and then entering the pattern. That's consistent with how VFR aircraft enter patterns at uncontrolled airports. Additionally, high performance aircraft may elect to choose to fly that pattern at 1,500 feet. And that leaves 2,000 feet for the transition. We believe aircraft transitioning north and south through that airspace at 2,000 feet will be deconflicted vertically from the traffic at the Fernandina Beach Airport. And then laterally, the Amelia Island passing, whether it be on the west side or east side of that island, would give ample lateral separation for aircraft transitioning north and south through there. The second part of that question, we talked about air traffic procedures and basically vectoring aircraft to keep them inside 10 miles so we don't have to expand or modify the Class Charlie. That's a complicated question. During peak arrival times throughout the day, Jacksonville International Airport may experience a significant increase in aircraft landing at Jackson International kind of all at the same time. When that happens, the techniques air traffic controllers use, vectoring to the downwind, reducing speed, even doing both of those, we're still going to get downwind base and final segments that exceed 10 miles. When that happens, air traffic controllers today, as the airspace is charted today, when those aircraft, the Jax arrivals, end up in a downwind that puts them beyond 10 miles, air traffic controllers are forced to kind of look at the scope, and they're observing VFR non-participating targets. It might be as low as 500 feet all the way up to 4,000 and above. These controllers, they have to choose an altitude to vertically separate the Jax arrival from the non-participating VFR aircraft. A lot of these non-participating VFR aircraft are engaged in flight training. They have sudden altitude changes, climbs and descents. They could turn rapidly. And those are the situations where we saw a lot of these TCAS resolution advisories that we talked about earlier. With the modification as it's proposed today, air traffic control will be able to take the Jacksonville International arrivals and keep those aircraft at 3,000 and 4,000 feet in their base and final segments of their the base turn, and then the final segment of their approach. Non-participating VFR aircraft can operate below there at 2,000 feet and below. That will allow 1,000-foot vertical separation between arrivals to Jacksonville International and the non-participating VFR aircraft in the extensions. 1,000-foot vertical separation will ensure that the air carriers do not get a TCAS resolution advisory while on final approach. And that is important for stabilized approaches. It reduces go around. And again, it enhances safety for everybody using the airspace just on the edge of the Jacksonville International Airspace Class Charlie.
And Joe, that was a very, very well put response. Just being here today, I've seen a number of different types of aircraft, from F-35s, Challengers. I've seen GA aircraft, a good mix of aircraft. So you have other things like wake turbulence, not to even include the number of aircraft and the specific types of separation that needs to be applied. So having the opportunity to talk to an aircraft that possibly could come in conflict with one of those aircraft's paths, their wake turbulence, their separation requirements, I think that is what's paramount. And it comes down to, we keep saying communication, not exclusion. But well put. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. And also for taking really good notes. Next question. Lewis, if you don't mind, what is the expected increase in radio traffic for the Class Charlie on a daily basis? If needed, will additional approach and departure frequencies be added?
Thanks, Andres. So we do anticipate an increase in aircraft radio calls, and that would be due to what Joe referenced on the previous question, to somewhat avoid that bottleneck situation. And that is not at all our intent, is to create a bottleneck situation. Our intent is for those aircraft to transition there. We just want to be in communication with them, provide positive separation. Reference the additional approach and departures frequencies to be added. We actually have them. We have sectors that are not utilized at occasions, and that's typically due to staffing. I'm sorry, not staffing, but that is typically due to workload. We do have the ability, if the workload is increased, to split those sectors and use those additional frequencies to manage that increase effectively.
So if I hear you correctly, that was also included in the proposed design submittal.
That's correct.
Thank you, sir. Next question. Joe, coming back to you, I apologize. Has there been analysis on the increase in VFR traffic operating below the proposed Class Charlie shelf, especially over Amelia Island?
No, there has not been a formal analysis completed that would answer that question. We have kind of done an informal analysis on that. And what I mean by that is we've talked to the users of the airspace through the ad hoc process, through pilot outreach programs, and we'll continue to do that after this project. And one of the things that we can talk to the pilots about, and we have talked to the pilots about, is the services that air traffic control offers to them. We don't want to create a bottleneck over Amelia Island. We don't want to force aircraft lower than they want to fly. Again, you've heard me say it already. Class C airspace is not meant to exclude operations, but only to establish two-way radio communications between the aircraft in there, and that's for separation. It's to increase safety. So, like a formal analysis, no. Informal, yeah, we've done some research. We've talked to the pilots, and hopefully, we don't create a situation where pilots feel like they can't call us and they need to fly low over Amelia Island.
Thank you for that, Joe. The next question, why is the FAA having this informal airspace meeting? Well, we have these types of meetings often, anytime that we introduce any modification to Class Bravo and Charlie. And this specific type of meeting is our opportunity to not only provide the proposed design to those that are going to be affected or that could be affected, but more importantly, to gain a better understanding of what their perspective is. So this is one of the opportunities that the public, aviation stakeholders, anyone and everyone can provide their input on the proposed design. And that is critical in coming to a proposed design that will meet the needs of both the operation and the aviation stakeholders. And in our FAA order, as the procedures for handling airspace, it actually outlines the process to change an existing Class Charlie airspace. And this phase of providing this type of meeting is required for each one of the changes that we have in the National Airspace system. This is a deliberate phase, a required part of making the modification. So it's not only required, like I mentioned in the beginning, it's our opportunity to receive input from interested parties and give them the opportunity to present their views. We started off the meeting with giving the community the opportunity to provide their views on the recommendation today. So it's a great opportunity to have some interaction and involvement from the community. All right, the next question. I promised Joe I'll give you a little bit of a break after this one, but I think this actually may be right up your alley. And it has to do with visual landmarks. We were just talking about that yesterday. So this is going to be a fun one, I think. What visual landmarks are available to keep the VFR pilot out of Class Charlie?
Yeah, thanks. And that is a good question. That was a concern that we received as part of the ad hoc committee's response, was we did not have clear visual landmarks for these modifications. We agree with the ad hoc committee on that, and we were able to make some changes to the proposal to accommodate that. Thank you for pulling the slide up. The first visual landmark we'll talk about is to the northeast, and that's going to be on the runway 26 extension. And so we chose the northern tip of Amelia Island as the visual landmark. Coming straight south, we chose the northern tip of Little Talbot Island. The northern tip of Little Talbot Island was specifically mentioned as an alternative and a visual landmark from the ad hoc committee in their report. So a straight line kind of just off from the beach there would be your visual landmark. Moving south, we kind of already talked about how we trim the bottom off of the 10-mile ring. We kind of have that flat part on the bottom. That was an exact, that line is the exact line that the ad hoc committee recommended. And so what that's going to allow aircraft to do is transition in and out of Craig, east and west, while remaining clear of the Class Charlie at Jacksonville International, remaining clear of the Class Delta at Navy Jacksonville. There's also an antenna farm just at where downtown Jacksonville is. There's 2 antenna farms. One's got 1,000-foot antennas and one has 1,100-foot antennas. There'll be plenty of lateral separation there for aircraft to transition east and west out of Craig. The visual landmark that they'll want to follow is going to be I-10, major highway that runs east and west. You'll want to stay just north of I-10 as you continue to fly westbound if you're exiting the area. We talked about Navy White House already, getting services through there, how to do that if you do not want to climb above it. The altitude of that Class Delta would be surface to 2,600 feet. And then moving over to the runway 8 extension, the visual landmark we used for that, if you continue to follow I-10 westbound until you reach the interchange of I-10 and Highway 301, that is a very large exit off I-10, lots of truck stops. They're doing construction there right now to actually make that interchange bigger. There's an antenna farm, or I'm sorry, not an antenna farm, excuse me. There are power lines that run from that interchange due north. Those are depicted on VFR sectional charts. They're visible on satellite imagery. If pilots continue westbound along I-10 until reaching the power lines at the intersection of Highway 301 and I-10, they can turn northbound and remain clear of the Class Charlie. Those were the visual landmarks. Most of those were recommended to us from the ad hoc committee, and we are happy to accommodate that every place that we could.
Thank you, Joe. Next question. We'll go with Harry, if you don't mind. And then after Harry, I'll go with Lewis. So for this next question, I think we're at number 17. I guess 18 will be for Lewis. Harry, what support or impact will there be for multiple Class Delta airspaces around the Class Charlie? More specifically, around approach control and spacing for those Class Deltas?
I think it's an interesting question. I think the first proposal that we had before the ad hoc committee, we did have the Class Charlie extension going into Mayport's Class Delta, as well as a little bit more into Craig's Class Delta. With the new change after the ad hoc and with the collaboration we had with the pilots and the committee, I don't think the new proposal will have much effect at all to the Class Deltas, if you're referring to Mayport, Craig, or Navy White House. As far as the transitions in and out of this Class Deltas, obviously there will be an impact going north of those Craig and Mayport Class Delta. But just to reiterate again, this extension is not to keep people out, but to have more participating aircraft that are establishing two-way radio communication with air traffic. But to sum up that question, I don't think this will have much of an impact to the surrounding Class Deltas.
And to go a little bit more into detail, Lewis, what do you think the effects are of this change on aircraft operating around Mayport?
So we believe there should be minimal impact to operations in and out of Mayport, specifically with the H-60s that are based there. The Triton UAS will continue to operate within the Triton TFR without interruption. There's no anticipated interruptions of PARs or ASR approaches at Mayport. The H-60s can still transition the coast low level just as they do today. As I mentioned, safe altitude at or below 2,000. And we currently have no data showing any conflicts between helicopters, the H-60s based at Mayport, and Jack's arrivals, also departures in that area over there as well.
Well put. And Harry, I'm going to come back to you. Maybe just a little reiteration of maybe the rest of the process. How will this impact the surrounding airports? Can you speak like maybe from a process perspective, Harry?
As far as the process, the service center and facility will develop a proposed Class Charlie airspace design, incorporating the user input and to be published in the NRPM per FAA Order 7400.2.
Which is what we're doing tonight. Is part of the process, service center, air traffic personnel, all putting together their ideas and getting input from the community, and later on it'll be published in a notice of proposed rulemaking. Okay, Joe, you have a little bit of a break. This question is for you. What is the potential operational impact or safety improvement for scheduled flight operations?
When we designed this or started this process and started the design of this modification of this airspace, again, like I talked about earlier, we reference commercial users or airlines operating into Jacksonville. We reference them a lot. And so the scheduled flight operations, commercial users are going to fall into that category. The safety improvements we're going to see for them are going to be basically them deconflicted from non-participating VFR aircraft when in the base and final approach segments of their flight. Almost all of the recorded safety events that we studied as part of this project involved a commercial user and a non-participating VFR aircraft. And again, like I stated earlier, we're keeping planes apart. So what's good for one aircraft is good for the other aircraft. And I don't think this project is just a safety improvement for scheduled flight operations. It's a safety improvement for all operations.
Thank you, Joe. Would you be able to speak to whether there was coordination between the flight schools at Craig and Fernandina Beach?
What do you mean coordination?
Specifically for the creation of a VFR corridor between the two.
Okay. No, we haven't had any formal discussions or coordination with flight schools operating out of Craig or Fernandina Beach for VFR flight corridor. I have participated and attended multiple pilot outreach programs. The Craig Airport, the Jacksonville Aviation Authority, which has operations or owns the Craig Airport, they have monthly meetings. I've attended several of those where flight schools have also attended. I know that there has been some discussion about creating a VFR corridor for aircraft to transition. We haven't had any formal discussion. I think after the conclusion of this project, that is a topic that the facility would be willing to discuss with these flight schools. I'm sure that there's a process. Andres, you may know about it, you may not, but I'm sure there's a process to address that, maybe through the 7400.2. But yes, if the flight schools wish to discuss that with the facility is willing to discuss that with them.
Well put. If there's, you touched on, if there's a need for additional considerations, rulemaking or non-rulemaking, either through this particular process or another, we are here to help out. Okay, thank you, Joe. The next question. Lewis, this question has to do with resources for Jacksonville to manage the increased workload. If the airspace is expanded, will there be additional staffing or resources for Jacksonville to manage the increased workload?
Thanks, Andres. As we discussed earlier on resources at Jackson Tower and Tricon, they currently have 36 certified air traffic controllers and 8 controllers in training, which the certified controller number now is just under the 80% of the fully allocated staffing for the facility. We do not have any records of suspended services for extended periods of time. The potential increase of flight following or services provided through those modifications is anticipated, and we intend to train the controllers on the modifications and the operations supervisors and staff to handle the increased workload as appropriate.
Well put, Lewis. Thank you. The next question has to do with aircraft routes and what the proposed design could potentially have come out of that. And Harry, if you don't mind, the person asking the question is, will I see aircraft flying new routes that have not typically been flown in the past?
I think that's a good
Harry?
question. As far as scheduled air carriers and commercial flights into Jacksonville, there won't be any change, or won't be any noticeable change. They'll still be flying on the published routes and transitions they currently fly now. But as far as non-participating VFR, obviously there will be some route changes to avoid that Class Charlie extension if they choose to continue to be non-participating. But I know I might sound a little bit of a broken record here, but I'd like to reiterate again that we do not want to keep them from that airspace. We would like them to participate and establish two-way radio communication with ATC so they can use their normal flight paths that they have been using in the past years through this extension while talking to us.
It sounds as if you'd like them to contact you.
Yes, very much so. As much as possible.
Thank you, Harry. The next question is the FAA conducting an environmental review to comply with the National Environmental Policy Act. The quick answer is yes. Just like with safety, anything we introduce into the national airspace system does undergo an environmental review. You have several different components or variables when it comes to introducing anything into the national airspace system. And one of the things that we look at each time we introduce a change to the national airspace system is an environmental review. We have our own internal FAA policy and also the National Environmental Policy Act. So we do review the potential environmental impacts associated with any proposed airspace change, and the FAA will continue to review input from the public, complete the NEPA process prior to implementation of the proposed airspace design. This is part of both our procedures for handling airspace and NEPA requirement in order to properly review and consider what the change will be to the national airspace system. The next question is, besides noise, are there any other environmental considerations? Well, I'll continue to talk more about the environmental review, but we consider several different categories. That includes environmental noise, air quality, etc. But we do encourage the submission of comments on any specific environmental concerns. And I'm sure that link will be provided somewhere during this event. But we have a community engagement page. We have an environmental page that folks can visit specifically for this particular project and for any other project. And I'll add that you can provide your noise concerns on the airport's website as well. All right. The next question, if a pilot flying without ADS-B, okay, Harry, how about you? This is an ADS-B question. I know you get excited about that. If a pilot flying without ADS-B is communicating with air traffic, is that guaranteed to keep the pilot out of the Class Charlie, or could the pilot still get a violation?
Well, pilots are responsible for the minimum equipment for various types of airspace they may fly through. Pilots should deviate around any airspace that they do not meet the minimum requirement for, even when they can establish two-way radio communication with ATC. However, waivers for non-ADS-B aircraft to operate in Class Charlie airspace can be submitted through the local Flight District Standards Office.
And we're sharing the waiver website or the ADS-B deviation authorization pre-flight to. I think it's ADAPT is what the cool kids call it. But you can visit that website to get the waiver. There are some specific requirements, and it's listed on the website as well. The goal is, of course, for everyone to use it, but the other goal is for air traffic to be in communication with aircraft in and around the area in order to enhance the safety. Thank you for the people in the back showing the board. Thank you, Harry. We'll move on to the next question. Joe, how much did the final airspace change from what was given to the ad hoc committee? That's a really good question. I'm going to hear some collaboration, communication, deliberation with no hesitation.
Yeah, I'd love to answer that question. I think we had a slide, we've shown it already with the airspace side by side. There it is. That'll help me kind of explain this. So the initial proposal, that's going to be the one on the left side of the screen that has the completed 10-mile ring, and the extension to the east is fanned out. The revised proposal and what we have reviewed today is the one on the right side of the screen. I'm proud to say that almost every single change that we made to this airspace was in coordination and collaboration with the ad hoc committee. They made requests, and we were able to accommodate their request with almost every single one of the changes. The first being the runway 26 final. Again, the initial proposal kind of had that arced fan out to the east. They wanted visual landmarks that were easy for VFR pilots to navigate around. So like we already kind of talked about, we used basically the shoreline to do that. Moving south, they wanted a VFR corridor into and out of Craig. They drew the line of where it is, that kind of flat bottom. We made no changes there. We took their recommendations. To the west of Jacksonville International on your runway 8 final, our initial proposal went out to about 15 nautical miles. They requested for us to bring that in a little bit. We reviewed flight data once again. Although we were not able to bring it in quite as far as they requested, we made a change from 15 nautical miles to 13.5 nautical miles from the runway 8 threshold. Additionally, that southern boundary, we've moved that up approximately a mile. And then the last change was the altitudes in the extensions. The initial proposal had an airspace floor of 1,200 feet on both the east and west side. The ad hoc committee recommended 2,200 to 4,000. We ended up at 2,100 to 4,000. We thought that would allow aircraft to operate in 1,000-foot increments, which is consistent with air traffic control assigned altitudes and separation standards. So 2,000 feet and below is available for non-participating aircraft. The arrivals into Jackson International in those modifications or those extensions will operate at 3,000 or 4,000 feet. That's basically the changes. Again, we did this in collaboration with the ad hoc committee.
Thank you, Joe. The next question has to do with alternative solutions. So throughout the process, through the process, there's expected to be other alternatives explored. And the facility has looked at several different alternatives to addressing the safety concerns, because it does come down to the safety concerns that they're addressing and mitigating what those safety concerns are. And this person asks about those alternative solutions. So Lewis, what specific alternative solutions did the FAA consider besides expanding the Class Charlie airspace?
Thanks, Idris. So I do want to start by saying, anytime we identified any of our facilities, any safety events or safety risks, the first thing we do is attempt to correct these issues with the least amount of impact to the users and the NAS. But with that being said, with the final intent to increase safety. So 3 alternatives were originally considered at Jacksonville, specifically for this Class Charlie. Number 1 was making no change, which that was not going to be acceptable. And I'll get into the non-rulemaking procedures we attempted as well, with making no change to that. Another was constructing a control tower within the Class Delta airspace at Fernandina to manage that increased traffic. I believe they said it was above 50,000 or around 50,000 operations were being conducted annually at that airport, which is a tremendous amount to not have a control tower at there. Another was relocating the Looney Fix on the arrival from the northeast that comes in over the coastline. That was deemed unfeasible as well, due to adjacent facilities and traffic patterns that we have previously attempted on that. And then we get into the non-rulemaking procedures that we did attempt. The first that we did do is issued a letter to airmen, and we conducted extensive pilot outreach programs through outreach. And Joe can speak to that. I know he spent a lot of time with the local flight schools, with the universities, with the local community, trying to reiterate this. Part of that letter to airmen additionally identified hotspots, areas of, we show high conflict areas that are routinely, the controllers have to engage to provide positive separation from unknown VFR traffic or non-participating in those areas. And we've seen throughout the years, and this has been a long process, that those efforts have been somewhat effective, but not effective to the extent to avoid the expected outcome.
Well put, Lewis. It's an extensive list of alternatives considered over a long period of time. How long were you guys working on the staff study just to get to this point, Lewis?
Andres, I believe we started the staff study in 2022 is when we started the staff study process, although the original proposal that was identified from the local safety council at Jacksonville was, I believe, in 2018, when we identified that there was an issue with TCAS RAs in the vicinity of the outside areas of the Jacksonville current Class Charlie. Through that process, I believe the staff study process started in 2022 before going into submission for the ad hoc committee presentation for that.
Thank you, Lewis. And you start off the conversation with attempting to have as minimal impact on GA community and really the users of a national airspace system, specifically the operation here. And this next question is, it goes into that. Will these changes push more low-level traffic into congested corridors or make it harder for small airports near Jacksonville to remain viable?
So the proposed change only increases the area where VFR traffic is required to communicate with air traffic control. All aircraft in Class C will be in contact with air traffic, reducing uncertainty in the airspace. Creates a safer, more structured environment that supports pilots rather than adding tasks. And I want to emphasize the unpredictability, and that does increase controller workload as unpredictability. So the intent is to have predictable flight paths and the established two-way communication with aircraft in those areas.
Thank you, Louis. And Harry, I think he's alluding to, I think he wants them to call you guys as well.
That would definitely help. More participating, the better.
All right, thank you. All right, the next question has to do with military operations. Joe, how will the FAA coordinate with military operations in the region that share nearby airspace?
Yep, thanks. The proposed modifications to the Class Charlie should have no impact on the military users of our airspace. Currently, right now, we see kind of three military users. We have the H-60s operating out of Navy Mayport. Those aircraft or those helicopters typically fly low level and are able to either fly under the modifications or around them. We have a squadron of multiple squadrons of P-8s flying out of Navy Jacksonville. They fly on IFR flight plans. They depart several times a day and arrive several times a day. They frequently come up to Jackson International for instrument approaches. When you're on an IFR flight plan, this modification should have no impact on you. And then the last kind of military user of our airspace is going to be the F-35 squadron that's based here at Jackson International. Typically, they're going to depart IFR and arrive IFR. Occasionally, they will come back VFR and do flight training over the airport. But again, it's not going to have any impact on any of our military users.
Thank you, Joe. The next question is, how can members of the public continue to submit comments after this meeting? Well, as we mentioned during the presentation, comments can be sent to the email address. Maybe we have that slide somewhere. It's 9-AJO-JAX-C-comments@faa.gov. The information regarding submitting comments can be found, and I think we're bringing up outstanding, can be found in the notice of proposed rule. So here's the email address that you can submit your comments to. The comment period is open until October 11th, and then even after that, the FAA does take in comments during the notice of proposed rulemaking, and that's a 60-day comment period. You'll see that on the Federal Register. We invite comments reference the proposed design either through this email address or through the notice of proposed rulemaking, which will be on the Federal Register. Thank you. Thank you for the folks. Thank you for the question and for the folks in the back with the slide. All right, the next question. This question pertains to commercial airlines. Again, and just worded a little bit differently. Louis, you haven't had the chance to address the commercial question. How will commercial airline operations benefit from the proposed expansion?
Thanks, Andrew. So commercial airlines will benefit from the enhanced safety and improved efficiency gained with the Class C modification. Although Jacksonville International Airport is adding a new passenger terminal and are anticipating an increase in commercial flights, the proposed airspace change is focused solely on increasing safety for all aircraft operating into and around the Jacksonville International Airport. And Andres, as you spoke earlier, you visually did see today, there is a big mix of aircraft that do come in and out of Jacksonville International Airport. So yes, commercial airlines will benefit, but so will all users of the Jacksonville Class Charlie and users of the International Airport.
Thank you, Louis. Quick question for you, Joe. If aircraft were vectored at higher altitudes, would that decrease the amount of conflicts?
Under the current dimensions of the Class Charlie as they are charted today, the answer is no. Typically, the high performance aircraft, the air carriers that are flying into Jackson International, they're looking to fly a 3-degree glide slope. What that means is for every 1,000 feet of altitude they need to descend, they've got to fly approximately 3 nautical miles. So in the modifications, the extensions to the Class Charlie that we're covering today, we're looking at a final approach segment between 11 miles to about 14 miles. So to follow that 3-degree glide slope, aircraft would need to be somewhere below 4,000 feet, so 2,000, 3,000, or 4,000 feet to capture that glide slope. As it's charted today, with the numerous VFR non-participating aircraft that operate just outside of the dimensions, and we've kind of covered this earlier, when air traffic is vectoring arrivals to Jackson International beyond the current dimensions, sometimes we're at 2,000, sometimes we're at 3,000, and sometimes we're at 4,000. The VFR, the non-participating VFR aircraft, their altitudes are what influence the altitudes assigned to arrivals into Jackson International. With the expansion, we will be able to consistently vector arrivals to Jacksonville International at 3,000 and 4,000 feet in these extensions, and will allow VFR non-participating aircraft to continue to operate at 2,000 feet and below. We think that this is reasonable and provides an increase in safety and increase in separation, vertical separation for all the users.
Thank you, Joe. This question has to do with Class Bravo. Harry, I think you're just the person to manage this question. Is this extension just a lead up to Class Bravo airspace?
Thank you, Andres, for an easier question for me. And sorry, Joe, for getting all the harder ones. That short answer to this, no. We do not plan on making a Class Bravo. We don't fulfill those requirements of 300,000 annual operations and 5 million passengers, which we do need both. And I don't believe we're projected in the short term or long term to get those requirements. So short answer, no.
Thank you. The next question is the FAA going to monitor for an increase in NASA ASRS, it's the Aviation Safety Reporting System, specifically related to near misses or loss of separation in the vicinity of the proposed airspace. So the ASRS is a confidential reporting medium for just capturing safety concerns, and that can be thrown in by pilots, etc. It can be thrown in air traffic as well. But if there are any near misses or losses of separation, and the FAA has their own way of recording the trends, recording those issues. If there appears to be a systemic issue, the FAA will act accordingly. And I'll go back to specifically those systems that we have, and it was mentioned several times this evening, the ATSAP, or Air Traffic Safety Action Program, where controls can provide their safety information, and those reports can include sharing the ASRS information. But internally, we thoroughly investigate every safety report, whether it's through ASRS, ATSAP, or any other system. And we do look at trends and even just those tactical safety issues. Next question. Harry, you're still on my screen. Good for you. The shelf to the east will definitely push pilots below 2,000 along the shore, just to non-participate. Okay. What happens when they run into the Mayport TFR?
That's actually a very good question, and lucky to get the opportunity to actually explain this to the flying community that transition this airspace, especially the Mayport TFR. With the new extension, yes, they will have to, if they want to continue to be non-participating, they have to go over the extension for runway 26 at 2,000 or below, or at 4,000 feet above. So it's either the option of going below it or above it on the extension. As far as the Mayport TFR, we like to call it a squawk and talk TFR. If you're talking to ATC and on a discrete beacon code, you can transition that TFR without any issue, which just gives them more opportunities to be a participating aircraft in our airspace. So as of right now, most aircraft are transitioning the TFR through participating with ATC with the discrete beacon code and two-way radio communication. The Class Charlie extension will just continue their flight following north as they go past that Mayport TFR.
Thank you, Harry.
And
here's a question. Go for it, Joe.
yeah, no, I just wanted to elaborate real quick on what Harry said about the Mayport TFR. The question is kind of specifically asking if you push pilots 2,000 feet and below, what happens when they hit the Mayport TFR. I think it's important to remind pilots, we talk about it's a squawk and talk TFR that air traffic can grant permission to fly through. Air traffic is more than just Jack's approach. Mayport Tower also has the authority to allow aircraft to transition the Mayport TFR. And if we're specifically talking about aircraft getting pushed 2,000 feet and below, they would be in the Class Delta of Mayport. You can call Mayport Tower. They can grant you permission. They can give you a discrete beacon code and allow you to transition it. They can also tell you the status of it. And that airspace frequently goes active and then is called down several times a day when the Triton TFR is operating.
Thank you for that, Joe. That was a good bit of information there. And the next question we have, I was actually thinking about throwing this back at Harry. I'm going to go to Lewis because he has been involved with some of the outreach. Lewis, the person asking the question is concerned that some pilots that are not well prepared will be caught off guard. Can you speak to how we work that concern into the process, Lewis?
So, Andres, the FAA JO 7400.2 order covers airspace changes, requires that after issuance of the final rule designating Class Charlie airspace, user education meetings are required to publicize the implementation of the Class C service. So past pilot meetings and plans to continue outreach programs with this as a new topic. So we do plan to continue the pilot outreach that we've currently been doing, and we will have, per the order, the publicized implementation of the Class C service as well.
And Harry, you've participated in quite a bit of this type of public outreach, correct?
Yes, me, Joe, and Lewis. Joe has done by far the most, but I believe they have been very successful. We see the outcomes of all these pilot outreach programs and meetings that we do with the pilots in the local area does have a very positive effect on safety and the understanding of the airspace. And like Lewis pointed out, we will continue to do that as much as practical.
Thank you, gentlemen. The next question, what changes to Jacksonville Class Charlie airspace will specifically affect operations at Fernandina Beach? And I'm just proud that I was able to say Fernandina. I think that's about right. But Joe, what changes to Jacksonville Class Charlie airspace will specifically affect operations at Fernandina?
Yep. So the airspace, the extension as proposed today would allow non-participating VFR aircraft to operate at 2,000 feet and below over the Fernandina Beach Airport. So talking about Fernandina Beach specifically, we would expect pattern traffic there to continue to operate at 1,000 feet. We would expect aircraft entering the pattern there that wish to overfly the airport to do that at 1,500 feet. High performance aircraft, jets entering a VFR pattern there would enter it at 1,500 feet. And then aircraft transitioning that area would transition at 2,000 feet. That allows 500-foot vertical increments for separation between all those types of operations. Additionally, we commonly get VFR departures off Fernandina wishing to pick up an IFR clearance in the air. Those aircraft can now level at 2,000 feet. They will be vertically separated from the arrivals into Jackson International. When they request their IFR pickup, they will already be at 1,000-foot increment, or at 2,000 feet, which is a IFR altitude, and assigned IFR altitude. So their IFR pickup should be immediate. If they're level at 2,000 and they're deconflicted vertically with other IFR traffic landing at Jackson International, there should be no delay in picking up their IFR clearance.
Thank you, Joe. The next question has to do with how aircraft will be handled within the operation. And Harry, if you don't mind taking the first stab at this, why doesn't air traffic vector to keep aircraft within the current class Charlie? Harry?
That's a good question. As far as our traffic level, the arrivals and departures tend to come in waves in Jacksonville. We can go from a 3-plane sequence to a 10-plane sequence of commercial airliners or general aviation going into Jackson International Airport. As you pointed out, as well as Lewis has pointed out, we have a very diverse aircraft group that go in and out of Jackson International. So we have the 125th Fighter Squadron for the Florida Air National Guard, which is a fleet of F-35s. And when you mix those, those high-performance fighter jets with the air carriers, you tend to have a pretty extended final for adequate spacing. So I would say in the ideal world, yes, it would be nice to only vector into the class Charlie. However, we just don't have the traffic level that could provide that capability.
And Lewis, did you want to add something to that, sir?
Yeah, the simplest way to put that is operational requirements. There's no way to keep the type of aircraft that land and depart out of Jacksonville within the confines of that. And I do want to reiterate as well, on the eastern edge, there's been a lot of focus over Fernandina and departures and traffic in that area. This is not just limited to arrivals to runway 26 at Jacksonville. This is also incorporates departures off of runway 8 when we're on an east operation. As Joe mentioned, we have had a significant amount of safety events where a high performance corporate GA departs Fernandina VFR and makes abrupt maneuvers to the north or the south with departures and arrivals, both in critical phases of flights, and eventually look to pick up their IFR clearances. So this is also intended for departures as well. So I did want to clarify that, along with the mix, like Harry was saying, of the type of aircraft. It's just not feasible to be able to vector those type of aircraft due to their operational necessities and for the importance of stabilized approaches. We do have data to support when there have been conflicts in those areas on arrivals for unstable approaches or go-arounds into the airport. So we did take that into incorporation as we were making these modifications.
Thank you, gentlemen. And just seeing the mix of aircraft that come in and out of Jacksonville, you run out of space, airspace, as far as vectoring them. So aircraft fast moving over the ground. If we're just talking about multiple Cessnas or Beechcraft aircraft, it's possible. But you throw in commercial aircraft, military aircraft, along with GA community, trying to sequence and separate, you just run out of space. The downwind gets extended pretty extensively. I could see that on any given day. Thank you. Joe, What education will be given to the local pilots on how to navigate the new Class Charlie? There is a concern, obviously, about how much we're communicating with the local pilots, the GA community. What education will be given to the local pilots on how to navigate the
That's a
new
good question. And
proposed time?
that's a good question. And the joint order, FAA order 7400.2, that's the order that provides guidance on how to go through this process and make this proposal. That order directs air traffic to host user education meetings to educate the users on the implementation process of this project. So we, of course, will have those. It's required as part of that project. The good news is we already have a great relationship with the users of our airspace in doing these pilot outreach programs. We've done them at Jacksonville University. We've done them at the Fernandina Beach Airport, the Craig Airport, the Herlong Glider Soaring Society. We will continue to do those. One of the topics that we will cover in these meetings in the future will be the implementation and the changes to this Class Charlie. Additionally, any changes made here tonight will be in conjunction with like a chart change. And so anybody using moving maps in their airplane or in their aircraft or a third-party software like ForeFlight or Garmin Pilot, any airspace changes will be uploaded into those as well, so pilots can confidently navigate around any changes.
Thank you, Joe. The next question is, when do you expect to have this Class Charlie in effect? The procedure for handling airspace, or 7400.2, the one we continue to talk about throughout the evening, does not have a specified finite amount of time to go from start to finish for a modification to go from design to execution and implementation. There are some finite time periods listed in the order. There's a 60-day notice of proposed rulemaking to get comments, and we spoke today about the 30-day comment period, but there's no specific time frame. I could say 6 months, 2 years, 5 years. The goal is to address the safety concerns as soon as possible. And this is part of the deliberate process that we have in place, which is a dynamic time period, but a deliberate phased approach. So that's a long way of saying we have no specific timeline, time frame that we have, but the goal is to have the safety concerns addressed in short order. The next question, are you putting in these procedures so the airlines can operate more flights? Harry, are you putting in these procedures so the airlines can operate more flights?
The short answer to that would be no, but I can understand why that question would be asked. We are, as the video at the beginning of this meeting pointed out, we are adding a new terminal for airlines that will add 6 gates to Jackson International Airport, the Bravo Concourse. Although the purpose of the airspace change is focused solely on increasing the safety for all aircraft that transition in and out of Jackson International and around the airspace.
Thank you. What is the penalty for violating Class Charlie airspace? Will the FAA allow for one-time deviations? Lewis, you just got excited about that question.
I mean, the easiest way to answer that, there's no change to how airspace violations are handled. Air traffic will issue a brasher warning if it appears a pilot deviation has occurred. But how potential violations are handled is still addressed by Flight Standards FSDO office. The Orlando FSDO will investigate and process all airspace violations on a case-by-case basis. I believe that question is possibly geared towards the change and maybe unfamiliarity or the process of the change. But as we outlined earlier, we will still have that outreach. It will be ample time for notification prior to the implementation of the change, and as well as the pilot outreach.
And so the question is an interesting one, and the goal really comes down to please communicate with us. It's just a matter of keying up the frequency, reaching out to air traffic, having that exchange of information. No one wants to be deviated. So please reach out to us. The proposed modification is in place to enhance the operation and to help the aviation community. Thank you, Louis. The next question, how many safety events were recorded prior to making this proposal? Joe, these things were documented in a staff study, and there were a number of other variables recorded, but how many safety events were recorded prior to making this proposal?
Yep. So we looked at two chunks of data when researching this proposal. The first were MORs. That's those mandatory occurrence reports. Those were created or generated after a TCAS resolution advisory. Those were retained in the FAA database. We reviewed just over 70 of those. Additionally, as part of the staff study, we asked controllers to report any conflicts that they may have experienced that did not result in a TCAS RA, but did result in immediate vectoring or immediate altitude changes when in close proximity to the airport. The controllers listed over 200 in a 6-month period. We personally went through each one of those. We looked at the radar replay. We validated that the conflict the controllers reported did in fact happen, and this project would address those. We weren't looking for conflicts that were 20 miles away from the airport. So we had 200 of those in a 6-month period, and then the 70 TCAS RA MORs. That's the kind of the two chunks of safety events we looked at.
Thank you, Joe. The next question is, are there plans to add a remote communications outlet at Fernandina? And Louis, that question's for you. Are there plans to add a remote communications outlet at Fernandina?
So reference to a remote communications outlet frequency at Fernandina, I believe that is intended for aircraft to pick up IFR clearances on the ground at Fernandina. At this time, there's no plan for a remote communications outlet to be installed at Fernandina, but pilots can contact air traffic at the Jacksonville TRACON. The phone number that can be provided as well later, but I'll go ahead and read it off now at 904-741-0284 for IFR clearances or to cancel IFR flight plans. That is the flight data phone number that rings directly into the TRACON at Jacksonville, and they can provide that information there. But I do want to address some of the concerns that we discussed earlier when aircraft were talking about the activity of White House class Delta, and then additionally possibly it has been brought up through the process as well about aircraft in a critical phase of flight departing Craig and having to remain below a shelf, and potential head-on conflicts of aircraft trying to remain below the shelf there. I do want to reiterate that that phone number can also be used, as well as what Joe mentioned earlier today, to find out the status of Navy White House outlying field, if you want to find out what the status of that airspace is as well. Also, if you're requesting a VFR departure code departing from Craig to the north, but you don't want to have your services transferred from Craig Tower and immediately switch over to the TRACON while you're trying to remain below the class Charlie, if you're requesting a beacon code for VFR flight following ahead of time, you're more than welcome to call that phone number when you're on the ground ahead of time and make your request to the TRACON, and they can provide you with a beacon code ahead of time as well to help alleviate some of that workload as you're departing. So that was a great question. Thank you.
Thank you, Louis. And it looks like we're down to the last question. And since you were keyed up, so this question, I think each one of you can add a little something to it. If you don't mind, I'll start off with Louis, and then we'll go to Harry, and then we'll close it out with Joe. How will this redesign improve safety while still protecting the opportunities, access, and flexibility that Northeast Florida's aviation community relies on every day? How will this redesign improve safety while still protecting the opportunities, access, and flexibility that the Northeast Florida community relies on every day? Lewis, do you mind starting us off?
Absolutely. So this redesign was built to balance growth with access. It expands the safety net around Jacksonville International while protecting the practice areas, training routes, and satellite airports that are part of everyday flying here. Military, commercial, businesses, general aviation all remain supported in the same skies with fewer conflicts and stronger protections. In the end, it's not about changing who flies here. It's about making sure everyone can keep flying here safely and confidently for years to come.
Harry, can you add a little something to that?
Thanks, Andres. I think that was very well put by Lewis. I would just like to reiterate that we try to be, as Jack's approach control tries to be the most accommodating facility as we possibly can be. We pride ourselves on that. We try to be as flexible and as dynamic and as creative as we possibly can to help the flying community in the flying areas. And I have to end my main point that I've brought up all night is that we do not want to keep people out of this airspace. We would like them to participate more and talk to ATC so that we can provide those safety concerns and safety alerts to them so that we can keep our airspace as safe as possible and have as efficient and dynamic airspace as we could possibly have.
And Joe?
So I think here at this facility, it's important to point out that we understand the primary user of the airport may be a commercial user, but the primary user of our airspace, the surrounding airspace, is general aviation. We must find a balance between general aviation and commercial users. I believe, and the team believes, that the modifications that were presented here today, with the collaboration and coordination of the users of the airspace through the ad hoc committee, we believe we have a product that increases safety for all users while still allowing access to the airspace around Jacksonville International for non-participating VFR aircraft.
Thank you, gentlemen. I'll add that the intent of the meeting also illustrates the FAA's intent on attaining the input that will help in addressing those other issues that were named in the question, as far as the opportunities, the access, the flexibility, and not impact this community in a way that is adverse. It comes down to safety. And I agree that there has been a considerable amount of collaboration and consideration from the aviation stakeholders. This is another opportunity for us to collaborate with the aviation community, but also the community at large. Again, thank you, panel members. Joe, Harry, Lewis, doing an awesome job representing your facility and the district. And thank you for attending the Jacksonville International Airport proposed Class Charlie Airspace Modification Informal Airspace Meeting. The recording of this event will be available on the FAA's YouTube channel and at www.faa.gov/go/Jacksonville. If your question was not answered today, please feel free to submit your question or comment during the open comment period to the email listed on the slide being shown. Remember, you must submit all comments no later than October 11th, 2025. All formal comments received during the comment period will be considered prior to any revision or issuance of a notice of proposed rulemaking for this airspace. The FAA appreciates your time and contributions to the proposed design of the Jacksonville Class Charlie airspace. This concludes our meeting. Have a wonderful evening.